My name is Claire Morgan. I am 33 years old. For most of my life, I believed there was one line my family would never cross. I was wrong. That morning, my mother placed a thick stack of papers in front of me. The coffee on the table was still warm. Next to the documents rested my father's silver fountain pen. It was the same pen he had used for every important decision in our family. Across the room, my younger brother Ethan sat quietly by the window. He wore his headphones while carefully putting together a wooden puzzle. He had no idea that our lives were about to change forever. My mother pushed the papers closer to me. "Just sign them," she said. "You've been gone for years. The people who stayed should be the ones who inherit everything." I looked down at the first page. My heart almost stopped. The title read, "Voluntary Waiver of Inheritance Rights." I kept turning the pages. With every page, the knot in my stomach grew tighter. This wasn't about giving up a few family keepsakes. They wanted me to surrender everything. The house, the farm, every bank account, even the legal authority to help make decisions for Ethan's future. I slowly looked back at my mother. She was gripping her coffee mug so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. I asked the only question that made sense. "Why does everyone need me to sign this today?" No one answered. The room became painfully quiet. Then, someone knocked on the front door. A delivery driver stood outside, holding an old cedar box. My father's handwriting was carved into the lid. It said, "For Claire. Open exactly 1 year after my death." Every person in the room froze. No one spoke. No one moved. At that moment, I thought the box contained nothing more than one final letter from my father. I had no idea it held the truth my family had spent years trying to bury. If you've ever had to choose between protecting your family and protecting yourself, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy emotional family stories with unexpected twists, I'd love to have you subscribe. My father was a quiet man. His name was Daniel Morgan. He never believed in long speeches. He believed that paper remembered the truth long after people forgot it. That was why he wrote everything down. Every harvest, every repair around the farm, every birthday, every family dinner, even the smallest moments that most people would never think to record. Back then, I thought it was just one of his harmless habits. I never imagined those notebooks would one day become the only reason I could prove what really happened. My father was only 64 when he died. No one expected it. One minute he was repairing a fence behind the barn. The next, he collapsed. By the time the ambulance reached the hospital, he was gone. The official cause was a massive heart attack. Everything happened so fast that none of us had the chance to say goodbye. His funeral brought together neighbors, old friends, and relatives I hadn't seen in years. Everyone had a story about my father. He had fixed someone's tractor without charging $1. He had stayed up all night helping a neighbor after a flood. He had quietly paid for a local kid's college books without telling anyone. Listening to those stories made me realize something. The man everyone admired outside our family was exactly the same man I had known at home. Kind, patient, steady. After the funeral, I stayed for several days. I wanted to help my mother adjust. I cooked meals, sorted paperwork, cleaned the garage. I also spent time with Ethan. He struggled to understand where Dad had gone. Every morning he stood by the kitchen window at exactly 7 o'clock. He waited for Dad's truck to come down the driveway. When it didn't, he asked the same question. "Is Dad working late today?" No matter how many times we explained it, his heart wasn't ready to accept the answer. Watching him broke something inside me. Before I returned to Portland, I sat with my mother at the kitchen table. I can come home more often, I told her. We'll figure this out together. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We'll be fine, she said. You have your own life now. At the time, I thought she was trying to protect me. Now I wonder if she was trying to keep me away. Over the next 12 months, I called every Sunday. Sometimes Ethan answered. He always sounded happy to hear my voice. Other times, my mother picked up. The conversations became shorter. If I asked about the farm, she changed the subject. If I asked about finances, she said everything was under control. When I offered to review legal paperwork because of my father's estate, she laughed. You're a nurse, Claire. Leave the legal matters to people who understand them. Something about that answer stayed with me. Dad had trusted me with important decisions my entire life. He had never treated me like someone who couldn't understand. Still, I let it go. I wanted peace more than suspicion. About 6 months after Dad passed away, Ethan called me unexpectedly. He almost never called without someone helping him. His voice was shaking. Claire, I can't find my blue folder. What blue folder? The one Dad always kept. He said it was only for me. Before I could ask another question, the phone changed hands. My mother came on the line. Oh, don't worry about that. He gets confused sometimes. There was never a blue folder. The call ended less than a minute later, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Dad organized everything by color. Blue folders, green folders, red folders. Every important document had its own place. If Ethan remembered a blue folder, I believed it had existed. I almost drove back to the farm that weekend. Instead, I convinced myself I was overreacting. I told myself grief makes people imagine things. I had no idea that one missing folder was the first crack in a much larger lie. 3 months later, another phone call changed everything. It wasn't from my mother. It was from a law office. The receptionist spoke politely. Miss Morgan, we're calling to remind you about the instructions your father left regarding a private delivery. I frowned. What instructions? There is an item that must be delivered exactly 1 year after Mr. Morgan's passing. It cannot be released before that date. I felt a chill run through my body. Suddenly, I remembered the small brass key my father had given me years earlier. The one tied to a faded blue ribbon, the one I had carried in my wallet ever since leaving for college. For the first time in 15 years, I took it out and looked at it carefully. I still had no idea what it unlocked, but something told me I was about to find out. I also had no idea that someone else was counting the days until that box arrived. And unlike me, they were terrified of what might be inside. The morning of the meeting arrived with gray skies and steady rain. Portland had always looked beautiful in the rain. That day, it felt cold, heavy, almost as if the weather already knew what was waiting for me. I left the hospital after finishing a 12-hour night shift. I hadn't even gone home to sleep. Instead, I drove straight to the farm. As I turned onto the familiar gravel road, memories came rushing back. Dad teaching me how to ride a bike, Ethan chasing chickens through the yard, summer evenings when all 4 of us sat on the porch eating homemade peach pie. For one brief moment, I almost forgot why I was there. Then I saw the cars, my Aunt Linda's SUV, my cousin Mark's pickup, a black luxury sedan I didn't recognize. Everyone was already inside. When I walked through the front door, the conversation stopped. Every face turned toward me. No one smiled. The attorney introduced himself. My name is Richard Collins. I've been asked to oversee today's paperwork. He gestured toward the dining room table. Several folders had already been arranged in neat stacks. One chair remained empty. Mine. My mother looked exhausted, but something about her expression didn't feel like grief anymore. It looked like determination. She waited until I sat down before speaking. We've already discussed everything. This is just a formality. I looked around the room. What exactly are we signing? No one answered immediately. Richard opened the first folder. The estate will be transferred to the remaining resident family members. I frowned. Remaining resident? He nodded. Since you no longer live on the property, your mother believes it would simplify future management. My father never told me anything about this. My mother leaned forward. He trusted me. He knew what was best. I stared at her. Then why wasn't I included in these discussions? Silence. Again. It was becoming a familiar answer. Richard slid the documents toward me. You may review them. I spent nearly 20 minutes reading every page. The deeper I read, the worse it became. The farm would belong entirely to my mother. Every investment account would transfer into her sole control. Dad's business records would become private family property. Most disturbing of all, Ethan's trust would also be controlled exclusively by her. There would be no independent oversight, no second signature, no outside review, just complete authority. I looked over at Ethan. He was quietly spinning one of Dad's old pocket watches between his fingers. He wasn't listening to the conversation. He trusted us, every single one of us. That trust suddenly felt painfully fragile. I placed the papers back on the table. I can't sign this. The room exploded. My aunt was the first to speak. So now you want money? My cousin shook his head. I knew she'd do this. My mother's voice rose above everyone else's. After everything I've sacrificed, you leave this family. You send a few checks, and suddenly you think you deserve half of everything? I took a slow breath. This isn't about money. It's about Dad's wishes. She laughed. A short, bitter laugh. You don't know what your father wanted. Before I could answer, another knock echoed through the house. Everyone froze. Richard looked confused. A uniformed courier stepped inside. Package for Claire Morgan. He carried an old cedar box wrapped in protective cloth. The moment I saw it, my pulse quickened. The handwriting on the lid was unmistakable. It belonged to my father. Richard examined the delivery paperwork. His expression changed immediately. This was deposited with our office 1 year ago. It contains specific legal instructions. My mother's face lost all color. She stood so quickly that her chair scraped loudly across the hardwood floor. That isn't necessary, she said. We're in the middle of family business. The courier didn't move. I'm sorry, ma'am. The delivery instructions are legally binding. It must be given directly to Miss Claire Morgan. He placed the box gently into my hands. It felt heavier than I expected. The cedar was worn smooth with age. There was only one small brass keyhole on the front. My fingers immediately found the old key inside my wallet. The blue ribbon was faded, but the key fit perfectly. The lock clicked open. No one in the room breathed. My mother took one nervous step forward. Claire, her voice was barely above a whisper. Please don't open that. For the first time that day, I realized she wasn't afraid of losing the inheritance. She was afraid of whatever my father had chosen to leave behind. I looked at my mother. Her eyes were fixed on the cedar box. She was no longer pretending to be calm. I placed the box on the table and lifted the lid. Inside were several neatly labeled envelopes. There was also a small digital recorder. A leather notebook rested beneath them. The first envelope had my name on it. The second had Ethan's. The third was labeled for my mother's attorney. At the bottom of the box was a blue folder. Ethan saw it before anyone else. He stood so quickly that the pocket watch fell from his hand. "My folder," he said. His voice was louder than I had ever heard it. "That's my blue folder." My mother closed her eyes. For 1 second, she looked tired. Then she looked angry. "Daniel was confused near the end," she said. "Whatever is in that box should not be taken seriously." Richard glanced at her. "You told me, mister." Morgan was mentally competent when he signed the estate documents. She turned toward him. "He was. Then we have no reason to dismiss these materials." The room became quiet again. I picked up the envelope with my name on it. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside was a letter written in my father's careful handwriting. "Dear Claire, if you are reading this, then I am no longer there to explain what happened. I am sorry for leaving this burden to you. I tried to solve it quietly. I failed. Now, I need you to protect your brother." I stopped reading. My throat tightened. Across the table, Ethan was staring at the blue folder. He looked frightened. I continued. The letter said Dad had discovered serious problems with Ethan's trust fund. For years, money had been withdrawn from the account. The withdrawals had been listed as medical expenses, but many of them had nothing to do with Ethan. There were payments for vacations, home renovations, a new vehicle. There were also transfers to an account Dad did not recognize. He had confronted my mother 6 months before his death. She told him the money belonged to the family. She said Ethan would never understand the difference. My vision blurred. I had to read that sentence twice. I looked at my mother. "Is this true?" She did not answer. Aunt Linda leaned forward. "Claire, you don't know how difficult things were. Your mother gave up everything to care for Ethan. That doesn't make the money hers." My cousin Mark shifted in his chair. He suddenly seemed interested in the floor. I kept reading. Dad had hired an independent accountant. The accountant reviewed 5 years of records. The total amount missing from Ethan's trust was more than $200,000. My chest felt tight. I turned toward Ethan. He was still standing beside the table. He did not understand the numbers, but he understood that people were upset. He covered his ears. I lowered my voice. "It's okay, Ethan. You're not in trouble." He looked at me. "Did Mom take my blue folder?" My mother stood. Enough. She reached for the letter. I pulled it away. "You don't get to decide when this ends." Her face hardened. "You have no idea what it took to keep this family together. I know you took money that was meant for Ethan. I used that money for this house, for the farm, for food, for everything he needed." "Then why are there vacation expenses?" She stared at me. "Why did Dad list payments to Aunt Linda?" My aunt's face changed. She looked at my mother. "You said Daniel knew about those." My mother said nothing. That silence answered everything. Richard opened the envelope addressed to him. Inside was a notarized statement. There was also a copy of a revised trust agreement. He read it carefully. Then he looked at me. "Your father removed your mother as sole trustee." My mother gripped the back of her chair. "He could not do that." "He already did." Richard turned another page. "Claire is named as co-trustee. An independent financial officer is the second trustee." My mother shook her head. "No." Richard kept reading. "The agreement took effect 8 months before Daniel's death." My mother looked confused. "That is impossible." "He never told me." Dad had not needed to tell her. He had documented everything. The leather notebook contained dates, names, amounts. Copies of conversations. Every time my mother tried to move money, Dad had written it down. Every time she explained an expense, he recorded her words. He had even written about the missing blue folder. The folder contained Ethan's original trust statements. It also held copies of checks signed by my mother. Several were made out to Aunt Linda. Others were made out to a company owned by Mark. I looked at my cousin. "What company?" He swallowed. "It was a landscaping business." "You don't own a landscaping business." "I was going to start one." "Did you ever do any work on the farm?" He did not answer. Aunt Linda began to cry. She said she had borrowed money. She said my mother told her it came from a family account. She said she never knew it belonged to Ethan. My mother laughed bitterly. "Everyone is innocent now." How convenient. I felt anger rising inside me. But beneath the anger was something worse. Grief. Dad had spent his final months fighting a battle alone. He had been gathering evidence while the rest of us believed everything was normal. I picked up the digital recorder. There was a small label on the back. "Play first file." I pressed the button. My father's voice filled the room. It was weaker than I remembered, but it was still his voice. If Claire is hearing this, then the truth has finally reached her. Ethan moved closer to the table. His entire expression changed when he heard Dad. He sat down beside me. The recording continued. Dad said he had tried to protect my mother from criminal charges. He had hoped she would return the money. He gave her several chances. Instead, she denied everything. Then she attempted to change the estate plan. She wanted control of the farm. She wanted control of Ethan's trust. She also wanted to remove me from any legal authority. Dad's voice became quieter. "I do not know whether your mother acted from fear, entitlement, or desperation. But I do know that Ethan cannot protect himself from people he loves. Claire, I am asking you to do what I should have done sooner. Do not confuse silence with peace." The recording ended. No one moved. Ethan placed both hands on the table. "Dad knew," he whispered. I put my arm around him. "Yes, he knew." My mother looked at us. For the first time, I saw fear in her face. Not fear of the law, fear of losing Ethan. She stepped toward him. "Ethan, honey, I took care of you." He pulled away. The movement was small, but it shattered her. He had never pulled away from her before. She looked at me. "This is what you wanted." "No, this is what Dad wanted to prevent." Richard gathered the documents. He said the estate meeting was over. No one would sign the waiver. No assets could be transferred until the trust investigation was complete. My mother slammed her hand against the table. "You cannot take my home." Richard remained calm. "The farm is not solely yours. According to the revised estate plan, 51% of the property belongs to Claire." My aunt gasped. My cousin finally looked up. I stared at Richard. "What?" He handed me another document. Dad had transferred the majority ownership interest to me. My mother retained the right to live in the house. But she could not sell the property. She could not borrow against it. She could not remove Ethan from the home without approval. She could not access his trust without a second signature. Dad had not left me a gift. He had left me responsibility. My mother sank into her chair. Her anger disappeared. She looked suddenly older. "You'll throw me out," she said. "No." My answer surprised everyone, even me. "I won't throw you out." She looked at me. "But you will no longer control everything." Her eyes filled with tears. "You think you can come back after all these years and run this family?" "I don't want to run this family. I want Ethan to be safe." She turned toward him. He was holding the blue folder against his chest. For the first time that day, he looked calm. That image made the truth painfully clear. He did not need more promises. He needed protection. Richard asked everyone except me and Ethan to leave. My mother refused at first. Then he warned her that interfering with the documents could create legal consequences. She walked toward the door. Before leaving, she stopped beside me. "Your father poisoned you against me." I looked at the letter in my hand. "No, he gave me proof." She left without saying another word. Aunt Linda followed her. Mark stayed behind for a moment. He looked ashamed. "I didn't know all of it," he said. "But you knew some of it." He nodded. That was enough. After they left, Ethan and I sat alone in the dining room. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The house felt different. Not safer, not yet, but honest. Ethan opened the blue folder. Inside were old therapy plans, bank statements, photographs. At the back was a sealed envelope with his name on it. He handed it to me. "Read it." I opened the letter. Dad had written it in simple words. Words Ethan could understand. "Dear Ethan, you are not a burden. You never were. The money in your trust belongs to you. It is there to help you live the life you choose. Claire will help you, but she will not choose everything for you. You deserve a voice. You deserve safety. You deserve people who tell you the truth." Ethan listened carefully. When I finished, he pressed the letter against his chest. Then he asked a question that broke my heart. "Does Mom still love me?" I took a breath. I wanted to give him an easy answer, but Dad had asked me not to confuse silence with peace. So I told him the truth. "I think she loves you. But love does not make every choice right." He thought about that. Then he nodded. "Can people love you and still hurt you?" "Yes." "Can they stop?" "Sometimes." He looked toward the hallway where Mom had disappeared. "What if they don't?" "Then we make boundaries." He repeated the word slowly. Boundaries. It was a word our family had never used. That afternoon, Richard helped us contact the independent trustee named in Dad's documents. Her name was Sarah Bennett. She was a forensic accountant. Dad had hired her before he died. She already knew most of the story. She told me the evidence was strong. Some of the money could be recovered. Some was probably gone. The legal process would be painful. It would also be public. I asked if there was another way. She looked at me carefully. "Are you asking because you want to protect Ethan? Or because you want to protect your mother?" The question stayed with me. For years, I had avoided conflict because I believed peace was the kindest choice. But avoiding the truth had not protected anyone. It had only given the lie more time. I looked at Ethan. He was organizing the papers by date. He deserved better than another quiet compromise. "Start the investigation," I said. By sunset, my mother had already begun calling relatives. She told them I had taken control of the farm. She said I planned to place Ethan in a facility. She said I was using Dad's death to steal the family property. By the next morning, my phone was filled with messages. Some called me selfish. Others called me cruel. One relative said a good daughter would never humiliate her mother. Not one of them asked what had happened to Ethan's money. That was when I learned something important. In some families, the person who exposes the damage is treated as more dangerous than the person who caused it. I stopped answering. I saved every message. Then I turned my phone off. The investigation had begun. And for the first time, my mother could no longer control the story. The first week of the investigation was quiet. Too quiet. My mother stopped calling me. Aunt Linda did the same. Even Mark disappeared. For years, silence had been the safest thing in our family. Now, it felt like a warning. Sarah began reviewing every account connected to Ethan's trust. She worked from the dining room because Dad had stored most of the financial records in the house. Every morning, she arrived with a laptop, 2 folders, and a thermos of black coffee. By noon, the table would be covered in statements, receipts, and handwritten notes. The more she found, the less I understood how no one had noticed. Money had been moved through small transfers, never enough to look dramatic, never enough to trigger an automatic review. A few $100s here, a few thousand there. Each withdrawal had a reasonable label. Medical supplies, transportation, home accessibility, therapy support. But when Sarah compared the dates, the truth became obvious. Several medical payments had been made while Ethan was fully covered by insurance. A large transportation expense matched the date my mother bought her new SUV. A payment for home accessibility had gone toward remodeling the guest bathroom, the bathroom Ethan never used. Sarah pointed to a series of monthly transfers. These concern me the most. The money had been sent to a company called North Valley Support Services. The name sounded official, but the address belonged to a mailbox rental store. I looked at the amount. Almost $4,000 had been transferred every month for more than 2 years. What was the company supposed to provide? Residential support for Ethan. I looked toward the living room. Ethan was sitting on the floor, sorting old photographs. He has lived here the entire time. I know. Then who received the money? Sarah turned the laptop toward me. The company had been registered under my cousin Mark's middle name. I felt my stomach drop. Mark had not simply accepted a few checks. He had created a business to hide the transfers. Sarah leaned back in her chair. This was planned. I wanted to disagree. I wanted to believe it had started as a misunderstanding. But misunderstandings did not require fake companies. They did not require false invoices. They did not continue for years. Ethan walked into the dining room holding a photograph. It showed Dad, Ethan, and me standing beside the old red tractor. Ethan was 10. I was 16. Dad had one arm around each of us. "Can we fix the tractor?" Ethan asked. I smiled. "It still works." "No." He pointed at the photograph. "This tractor." He meant the picture frame. The corner had cracked. I took it from him. "Yes. We can fix it." He watched me carefully. "Some things can be fixed." It sounded like a question. I looked at the papers covering the table. "Some things can." He nodded and returned to the living room. Sarah waited until he was gone. "He understands more than people think." "I know. Your father knew too." She handed me another notebook. This one was different from the others. Dad had written Ethan's name on the cover. Inside were notes about Ethan's preferences, his routines, his goals, the things that frightened him, the things that made him proud. Dad had also written down conversations with my mother. One entry was dated 9 months before his death. She says Ethan will never live independently. She says planning for it only creates false hope. I disagree. He deserves the chance to choose what his future looks like. Another entry was written 3 days later. "Claire understands how to listen without taking over. I hope she will come home when the time is right." I had to stop reading. All those years, I thought Dad wanted me to build a life far away from the farm. Now, I wondered if he had always hoped I would return. Not to save the property, to protect Ethan's right to become his own person. That afternoon, Mark finally called. His voice was unsteady. "We need to talk." "Then come to the farm." "Not there." "Why?" "Because Sarah is there." "That is exactly why you should come." He hung up. 20 minutes later, he sent me an address. It was a coffee shop near the highway. I almost ignored him. Then Sarah told me to go. Do not threaten him. Do not promise anything. Just listen. I arrived before he did. The coffee shop was nearly empty. Rain slid down the windows. When Mark walked in, he looked exhausted. He sat across from me without ordering anything. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then he placed a flash drive on the table. What is this? Everything I have. Everything about what? He rubbed both hands over his face. North Valley. I stared at him. You created the company. Yes, to steal from Ethan. He flinched. I did not think of it that way at first. What way did you think of it? Aunt Diane said the trust had too much money sitting in it. He always called my mother Aunt Diane, even when we were children. She said the farm was struggling. She said your dad was too stubborn to use the money. So you created fake invoices. She told me it was temporary. And then? Then it kept going. His voice became quieter. Every time I tried to stop, she reminded me that my name was on the company. I looked at the flash drive. Why give me this now? Because she is going to blame all of it on me. Did you take money? Yes. How much? He looked away. About 30,000. The number made me sick. What happened to the rest? Your mother used most of it. For what? Farm debt. House repairs. Linda's mortgage. Some of it went into a private account. Whose account? He looked at me. Your mother's. I pushed the flash drive back toward him. You need to give this to Sarah. I came to you first. Why? Because I thought you might help me. What kind of help? He swallowed. If I cooperate, maybe you can tell them not to press charges. I felt anger rise in my chest. You helped steal from someone who trusted you. I know. No, you know you got caught. He lowered his head. For a moment, he looked like the boy who used to follow me around the farm. Then I remembered Ethan asking whether people could love you and still hurt you. The answer was sitting in front of me. Give the drive to Sarah. I will tell her you came forward. That is all I can do. Mark nodded slowly. Before leaving, he looked back at me. Your mom did not start this because she hated Ethan. That does not matter. It matters to her. He walked away. I stayed at the table long after he left. The coffee in front of me had gone cold. I thought about my mother, about all the years she had cared for Ethan, the appointments, the sleepless nights, the meals prepared exactly the way he needed them, the routines she never forgot. None of that disappeared because she had done something terrible. That was the hardest part. People rarely become villains all at once. They cross one line, then another. Then they spend years explaining why the lines no longer matter. When I returned to the farm, Sarah was waiting. I gave her the flash drive. She reviewed it that evening. By midnight, she had enough evidence to trace nearly every fraudulent payment. Mark had saved emails, invoices, bank records. He had even saved voice messages from my mother. In one recording, she told him to change an invoice date. In another, she warned him never to mention the trust in writing. There was no room left for denial. The next morning, my mother came home. She had been staying with Aunt Linda since the meeting. I heard the front door open while I was making breakfast. Ethan froze at the table. His spoon remained in the air. My mother walked into the kitchen. She looked at him first, then at me. I need to speak with my son. Ethan lowered his spoon. I stepped aside. You can speak with him. Alone. No. Her eyes hardened. You do not get to control every conversation now. I am not controlling it. I am making sure he feels safe. She looked at Ethan. Do you feel unsafe with me? He stared at the cereal in his bowl. The silence lasted so long that my mother began to cry. Ethan, please look at me. He did. Did you take my money? The question was simple. Her answer was not. I used money for the family. Did you take my money? She pressed her lips together. Yes. Ethan nodded once. Then he asked another question. Did Dad tell you to stop? She closed her eyes. Yes. Did you stop? No. He turned back to his breakfast. My mother took a step toward him. I am sorry. He did not respond. She reached for his shoulder. He moved away. That small movement broke her again. She covered her mouth and began to sob. For years, I had imagined confronting my mother. In those imagined moments, I was angry, powerful, certain. The real moment felt nothing like that. It was only painful. No one won. No one felt relief. There was just truth. And truth had finally arrived, too late to be gentle. My mother sat across from Ethan. I was afraid. He kept looking at his bowl. Afraid of what? I asked. She looked at me. Of losing everything. The farm was failing. Your father would not sell any land. He would not ask you for help. I thought I could borrow from the trust. You did not borrow it. I planned to replace it. When? She had no answer. I sat beside Ethan. Why did you try to remove me from the estate? Her expression changed. Because Daniel trusted you more. That is not an answer. He was going to make you responsible for Ethan. I knew that once he did, I would have no place here. I stared at her. You thought I would take Ethan away from you. I thought you would decide I was no longer needed. Her voice sounded smaller now. All the anger was gone. Underneath it was something I had never seen before. Fear. Not fear of prison, not fear of losing money. Fear of becoming unnecessary. She had built her entire identity around being needed. When Ethan began wanting more independence, she resisted. When Dad challenged her control, she fought him. When I offered help, she treated it like a threat. The trust had become more than money. It had become the last thing she believed she could control. Understanding that did not excuse what she had done, but it helped me understand how she had become capable of it. Sarah entered the kitchen. She placed a folder on the counter. My mother looked at her. What happens now? Sarah remained calm. The evidence will be turned over to the district attorney. My mother's face collapsed. Claire, I did not look away. You had chances to stop. You had chances to tell the truth. She stood. You would send your own mother to prison? I am not making that decision. You started this investigation. Because Ethan deserved protection. She looked toward him. He was still sitting quietly. Then he spoke. I do not want Mom in prison. My mother began crying again. Ethan continued. But I want my money back. Sarah nodded. That is reasonable. I want Mom to stop deciding everything. That is also reasonable. He looked at me. And I want to learn how to live somewhere else. The room went still. My mother stared at him. You want to leave me? He shook his head. I want to leave the house. That is not the same. His words were slow, but they were clear. For the first time, he was speaking about a future that belonged to him. My mother looked devastated. I felt something different. Pride. Dad had wanted Ethan to have a voice. Now he was using it. Over the next several weeks, the legal process moved quickly. Mark agreed to cooperate. Aunt Linda returned part of the money she had received. She sold a second car and refinanced her home. It was not enough, but it was a beginning. My mother signed an agreement freezing her personal accounts. She also gave up all financial authority over Ethan. The district attorney offered her a plea agreement. She would avoid prison if she accepted responsibility, repaid what she could, completed probation, and performed community service. She would also have to attend financial counseling. At first, she refused. She said signing the agreement would destroy her reputation. Then Ethan asked her one question: "Do you care more about your reputation or telling the truth?" She signed the next day. The farm was placed under new management. I did not know enough about agriculture to run it alone. Dad had understood that. His documents named a local manager named Caleb Ross. Caleb had worked with Dad for years. He knew every field, every machine, every weakness in the business. Together, we sold a small, unused section of land. The sale paid off the most urgent debt. We also ended several unprofitable contracts. For the first time in years, the farm began supporting itself. I reduced my hospital hours. Then I moved back into the small cottage behind the main house. It was not the life I had planned, but it felt like the life I had been moving toward without realizing it. Ethan began working with an independent living specialist. At first, he hated it. He disliked the new schedule. He disliked taking the bus. He disliked cooking anything that required more than one pan. But he kept trying. 3 months later, he made dinner for both of us. The pasta was overcooked. The sauce was too salty. It was the best meal I had ever eaten. He also found part-time work at a local garden center. He loved organizing seed packets. He memorized the watering schedule faster than anyone else. Customers began asking for him by name. One afternoon, he came home holding his first paycheck. He placed it on the kitchen table. "This is my money." I smiled. "Yes." "Do I decide what happens to it?" "Yes." He thought for a moment. "I want to buy a new frame for the tractor picture." We bought one that evening. He chose a simple wooden frame. When we placed the photograph inside, he touched the glass gently. "Some things can be fixed," he said. This time, it was not a question. My relationship with my mother changed slowly. She stayed in the main house. The estate documents allowed it, but our conversations became limited, practical, careful. For months, she refused to discuss what happened. Then, one evening, I found her sitting on the porch. She was holding one of Dad's notebooks. "I used to hate these," she said. "I know. I thought he wrote things down because he did not trust me. Maybe he wrote things down because he wanted the truth to survive." She looked toward the fields. "I loved him. I know. I loved Ethan. I know." She turned toward me. "Then why was I able to do this?" I sat beside her. "Because loving someone does not automatically make us safe for them." She looked down at the notebook. I kept telling myself I was protecting the family. "You were protecting your control." She nodded. It was the first time she admitted it without an excuse. "I do not know how to repair this." "You do not repair it with one apology." "Then how? You tell the truth every day. You respect Ethan's decisions. You accept that forgiveness may not happen when you want it." She wiped her eyes. "And you? What about me? Will you forgive me?" I looked across the yard. Ethan was walking home from the garden center. He carried a small paper bag in one hand. His steps were confident. His shoulders were relaxed. "I do not know yet," I said. My mother nodded. For once, she did not demand a different answer. 1 year after the cedar box was opened, Ethan moved into a supported apartment in town. It was only 15 minutes from the farm. He had his own kitchen, his own bedroom, his own key. The first night, my mother stood outside his door with tears in her eyes. She did not ask him to stay home. She did not tell him he was making a mistake. She simply hugged him. Then she stepped back. That was the first sign that she was changing. Not because she said she had changed, because she finally allowed someone she loved to choose a life beyond her control. Before I left, Ethan handed me the brass key with the blue ribbon. "You keep it," he said. "Why?" "Because Dad gave it to you." I closed my hand around it. The ribbon was almost gray now. The key no longer opened anything important. The box was empty. The secrets were gone. But I kept it anyway. Not as a reminder of what my family had done, as a reminder of what my father had taught me. Silence is not always peace. Love is not always safety. And protecting a family does not mean protecting every secret inside it. Sometimes protecting a family means telling the truth, even when the truth changes everything.